Excellent. Well, afternoon and welcome to this Leadership in Coaching webinar with Bob Craig and e-Memoir. This is part of Bob Craig's Teaching and Learning Suite. I'd like to keep these sessions as interactive as possible, so please feel free to use the question or chat facilitator to put any questions or thoughts to us. If you've got a microphone attached to your laptop, PC, tablet, phone, however it is that you're communicating with us now, joining us, and you'd like to use that, just let me know and I'll activate it. But right now I'm going to hand over to Bob Craig. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Thanks very much, Marek, and good afternoon, everybody. Just a very brief introduction of myself. I've been around post-compulsory education for about 20 years. Started off as an English teacher in a college in Grimsby, and since then I've had a number of management roles, tutoring roles, and I've been a consultant, freelance consultant for 4 or 5 years. So we've got about 45 minutes, and as Marek said, I would encourage anyone to, to make up, to ask questions, to share your own experiences. Coaching something for me that in all the different roles that I've fulfilled in the past and now, it's always been at the core of, how do you interact with students and to get them thinking? That was one of my questions as a teacher, and the way you question, the way you use coaching was one of my main answers. As a manager, I've held a couple of management roles before. How can you help people to clarify an issue, help them to take action, to commit to action? Coaching, again, was one of the core answers. So, I'm a massive advocate of it. The format of the next 45 minutes will be, I've got quite a few slides, mainly little coaching models and ideas, and there's a video that lasts about 6 minutes that we'll watch at some stage. So, in a nutshell, what I tend to do as well is leave a slide up and often leave about 5-10 seconds for you to cast your eye over it, as partly as a break from my voice and partly just to think about the information before I talk around issues. So that's what we're planning to do. We're going to look at how to use coaching in meeting contexts, in one-to-one conversations with people, when we're having challenging conversations with staff. I mean, the focus today primarily leadership coaching, the assumption being that most of you will have leadership roles. So whereas most of my webinars are about conversations and teaching methods with students, this one primarily is about your roles in management contexts. So I guess it starts to help with a definition. There's millions, but these are 2 definitions that I particularly like. So this idea about small actions, what a coach does, what a manager does often is, we can have grand plans and visions and all these important things, but really the most important thing is creating momentum, helping people to take actions within ideally 24, 48 hours to begin to make progress. So I really like this idea about small actions, and also it's about helping someone to learn. So just to re-emphasize that point really, this idea that, and you might be one of these people, I am a little bit, if I'm being totally honest, I have lots of ideas, I'm quite creative, lots of things I'd like to do, and sometimes do them, but often, what holds you back from taking action in your own best interest? Why do we procrastinate? That's something we're going to be touching on in a little while. Because what matters most is the doing, isn't it? It's not about, initially it's helpful to have an intellectual understanding, to be clear about where we want to get to and the milestones, but the bottom line of it all is, how can we take action to improve our own condition, the people that we work with, and so on. So within that, I think often there can be a lot of preoccupation with decision making and smart targets, and as important as these things are, it's commitment that matters. You can have a lovely, well-worded target, and you can sort of have a vision, and you can sort of make decisions about who's going to do what. But really what matters is commitment, it's the doing. And that's what the primary focus of this webinar is going to be. So, that probably doesn't need expanding very much. benefits of action. Think about that. How do we help ourselves and other people to see the relevance and the benefits of acting in particular ways? And that's where coaching comes in. There's other styles of management, leadership, communication that we need in different situations, aren't there? We can be very directive sometimes. Some people need to be micromanaged, very sort of clear sense of what you expect them to do, and lots of monitoring. So coaching isn't the only way to interact with people, but it's a very powerful way to get people to think and commit to actions. This is something that was introduced to me. I first really became interested in coaching probably around 10 years ago. And this phrase, someone explained it to me, and at the time I didn't quite get it fully, but the more work that I do as a coach, the more training that I do in terms of coaching skills with organizations, it really resonates with me quite strongly. That when we're working with other people, what the coach tries to do is have this beginner mind. We can put a different hat on, we can have a different approach if that approach isn't working, but initially what I'm suggesting in a lot of situations is to have a default way of interacting with other people that is like this, that probes for clarity, that doesn't make assumptions, where we're curious. We want to find out the other person or people's perspective. Where are they coming from? What have they already done in the past? What are their blockages and what are their triggers, anxiety triggers, or what is it that inspires them? So this beginner mind is a really useful thing to have in mind when we're either formally coaching someone or, informally. Someone stops you in a corridor, have you got a minute? Having this beginner mind, oh, that's interesting, tell me a bit more. What have you done so far? How is this going to help? What does this relate to? So we ask a few questions to really make sure that we're clear and the other person's clear about what it is they're doing and how it's going to help. So maybe, as with a lot of these slides, a lot of these ideas, as Marek said, you will get them, and I'd urge you strongly to come back to them. Maybe have a team meeting around this slide or some of the other ones. So again, this just to put this webinar in some sort of context, that coaching can be used, individuals, groups. We can coach your own manager as well. Sometimes people assume it's someone, coaching down, almost someone that you're line managing, or if you're a teacher coaching students, but it's a good way to be curious and to ask your manager to clarify the priorities, the issues, the rationale. It can make people feel uncomfortable sometimes, because instead of just trotting out a soundbite, you're actually asking them to clarify or justify a situation. But it's got all sorts of usages. And for each of these areas, I don't want to do a hard sales pitch or anything, but I do a lot of coaching skills training, and for each of these areas, they're an issue in themselves. We can look at lots of different areas within each of these 4 subcategories. Lesson observation feedback, for example. Is that something you do with a clipboard in hand and read someone's feedback out to them? Or can we use coaching to get the other person to think about what they've just done, about what they might have done differently, about what they could do in the future? So I'm going to show a clip now. That's about 6 minutes. Hopefully you find it interesting. It's it's American voice. It's primarily to do with commercial businesses rather than sort of learning organizations, although clearly we are commercial businesses as well nowadays. But anyway, I hope you find it helpful. It's about 6 minutes long.
Let's start by looking at what your organization is trying to achieve, your success. Success is defined by your business goals, and most likely your financial targets, and how well you achieve those goals, your performance. Core values are also an important part of your strategy, since they help guide the daily actions of your organization. To stay competitive, your organization needs individuals who are willing and able to perform at higher levels, to give more at work, to give maximum contribution to the organization. But it's not something that you can mandate or delegate to your managers, and it's not easy. Increased contribution is the prize of a more engaged workforce, but it's only one half of the story. It's just one half of what we call the engagement equation. Individual employees are on a separate path toward their own and unique definition of success at work. It's based on personal values, goals, career aspirations, and work-life needs. And it could be defined as greater compensation, professional growth, greater work-life balance. But unlike the organization, there's no one answer. There's no right answer. Individuals are all looking for work that works for them personally, and they're looking for maximum satisfaction. And when I say individuals, I mean everyone, executives, managers, and individual contributors. They're all pursuing their own individual definitions of success, and ultimately, they need to take control of their own engagement. So the organization is pursuing its definition of success, and individuals are pursuing theirs. These two strategies intersect daily at a place we call the job. This is the point where what the organization needs employees to give and what employees want to get from the job come together. We define full engagement as the intersection of maximum contribution for the organization and maximum satisfaction for the individual. This is the apex in our model, a sustainable level of high performance that mutually benefits both parties. Of course, as we look across any organization, not everyone's at the apex, certainly not all the time. There's a wide distribution in terms of contribution, with high performers on one end and people who aren't contributing much on the other. Individuals, too, don't always get what they're looking for. They're at different levels of satisfaction. Some people are fortunate enough to be at the apex, high on both contribution and satisfaction. We call this group the engaged. Now let's look at some other scenarios. Some people are high on satisfaction, but they aren't contributing fully. There are a few things that might be going on here. The person might be new to the organization or new to the role. Although satisfaction's high, they're not yet fully up to speed. We call this group the honeymooners. We also find people that are incredibly busy here. They're working hard, but on the wrong things. Or people who have found a nice, cozy spot in the organization and are content with minimum contribution. So whether they're running hard on an exercise wheel or tucked away somewhere cozy, we call this group the hamsters. On the opposite side of the model, we have individuals who are delivering great results, but for one reason or another, not getting what they want from the work. We call this group the crash and burners. And you need to pay close attention to this group. Clearly, their level of contribution needs to be sustained for the organization to succeed. But left unmanaged, these individuals will eventually find one of two exit routes from this unsatisfying situation. They might quit at a great known cost to the organization, or more likely, they'll simply pull back on their contribution and drift into the lower part of the model. In effect, they quit and stay. The impact of drifting isn't as obvious as when they leave outright, but the impact on performance can be substantial. Here they join the disengaged, low on satisfaction and contribution, where no one is getting what they need from the relationship. Disengaged employees often have turned an emotional corner, and their attitudes and behaviors can be contagious to the other groups. Here, the partnership between the company and the individual is clearly in need of a fix, but your existing performance management processes have failed to address the situation. So what about the people in the center? This is an important group we refer to as the almost engaged. Important because they tend to be a large part of the employee population doing a decent job and reasonably satisfied. They're more employable than the disengaged and more likely to consider a new employer than the fully engaged. And because they're decent performers, it's tempting to focus your coaching efforts elsewhere. So the challenge for your organization is managing this dynamic, aligning individuals to your goals to achieve maximum contribution, while at the same time supporting individual employees past the personal success at work. It's a challenge you can't solve with a survey and a few organization-wide initiatives. And it's not solely the job of the executives or the managers. To drive employee engagement, you must make it a daily priority. Creating a more engaged workforce is a shared responsibility. It requires a teamed approach, a partnership involving individuals, managers, and executives. Individuals need to act on their engagement. They need to take time to assess their own goals and satisfaction drivers to clearly define what success looks like for them. Since this is a partnership, they need to communicate with their manager primarily, not only to share their aspirations and needs, but also to clarify where the organization needs them to focus their talents and energy. And finally, they have to take action. They can expect help, coaching and guidance along the way, but at the end of the day, they own their engagement. They need to find ways to get to the apex. Managers play an important role. Since engagement is an individualized equation, only they can work one-on-one with their team members to coach them to higher levels. The fact is, managers need to care about engagement if they want to reach their goals. They need to build solid coaching relationships with their team members. They need to coach for performance and for development. They need to align daily priorities, interests, and talents to the organization's goals. They need to recognize and show appreciation for discretionary effort and achievements that are in line with the strategy. And finally, they need to engage themselves and engage each individual on the team in dialogue about what matters most for the organization and for them. The best managers are able to directly connect the individual passions and proficiencies of their team to the organization's priorities. Okay, so what about the executives, the senior leaders? What is their role in this teamed approach? Clearly, they are also individuals and need to pay attention to their own engagement and the engagement of their direct reports. They need to model what they expect their managers to do with their teams. This is a great opportunity to lead by example. But beyond this, they have an important role in setting the tone, providing clarity around the goals and the strategy. Ultimately, they need to make their case for engagement. By this, I mean they need to foster a sense of community within the organization. They have to be authentic in what they say and what they do. They must provide significance to the aims of the organization to really help employees find greater meaning in the work that they do and build excitement to move the organization forward. By making engagement a part of the company culture, making it a daily occurrence versus an event, and by addressing it as a team at the individual, manager, and executive levels, an organization can, over time, build a culture of engagement that drives performance, one in which each individual is achieving his or her ambitions and finding maximum satisfaction in their work, but also contributing more at work to drive the organization's success.
So normally I have a 3-minute rule for clips, and that was about 6.5 minutes. Hopefully you found the issues interesting, and hopefully some of you will come back to that and dissect it a little bit more detail. The rest of the webinar I'll be touching on a number of the issues raised in that short clip. But it is this idea of making engagement a daily occurrence. And that's why coaching can be something that's fairly formal. So you might have a scheduled conversation with someone you work with, a line report, and half an hour blocked out or whatever. But also there's lots of little informal coaching models that I'm going to touch on 1 or 2 of those as we go through. But this idea, there's no one answer to engaging staff. We'd all agree with, wouldn't we? Of course we would. And I'm not saying coaching is the sort of magic pill or anything, but it can be used to manage the disengaged staff. One of the models we're going to look at shortly is a conversation script to use with staff who have lost their mojo or a sense of purpose or disengaged. Coaching can also be used with your sort of gifted, talented, high-achieving members of staff as well. So just one more sort of generic thing before we start looking in more detail at the models. One of the barriers to achievement that I touched on earlier, the barriers to people fulfilling a potential, being satisfied at work, is procrastination. Something that I guess we all do from time to time. You know what it's like tidying your sock drawer and your desk endlessly, but it's really, beyond the sort of jokes. When I talk about procrastination with a live or with in face to face, most people laugh and recognise themselves in this quadrant, recognise themselves as a bit of a procrastinator. But it doesn't only mean that a lot of people need a panic monster, the deadline, the looming deadline, to actually sort of scare them into acting. But procrastination can also lead to a lot of missed opportunities, putting off doing things that are not necessarily deadline based, but could stepping into new situations, stepping out of our comfort zone, and taking on some sort of new project or challenge that isn't necessarily essential, but could actually make a lot of difference to ourselves and to our organizations. So I think it's a really interesting area that maybe not too many of us think about too much. So here's the typical examples of why people procrastinate. So I'll just leave that up for 10 seconds. And this is where coaching can come in. It's about us recognizing whether in ourselves, by the way, but also in the people that we're leading and managing, why aren't they taking steps to complete things that would help themselves and help others? Is it a demand for perfection? And if it is, coaching can help that, by helping people to think about what would be so bad about not realizing perfection. If people are saying it must be done right and I mustn't make any mistakes, then we need to unpick that mindset, that thinking, because people will make mistakes, but nothing is perfect anyway, I would argue. So if that's a demand, it's a completely unrealistic one. I won't be told how to do things or what to do. That can be a spirit of rebellion and independence, can be a good thing, but it can also be associated with stubbornness. So sometimes if we either give genuine choice or the illusion of choice when we're working with people, so you might say, here's one option, option A, here's another option, option B. Now tell me which one you prefer and what your first step will be towards that option. So it's giving people almost a closed choice, but there's still anyone who is a bit obstinate and stubborn, and instead of who doesn't like being told what to do, you're giving them two choices. They choose one, and then you coach in terms of the next step or the first thing they can do. So I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I'm hoping that you guys are going to come back to some of these slides, because this is a massive issue, and it's a massive, it can make people feel guilty, disappointed in themselves. Why are people procrastinating? Is it because they've got a fixed mindset and they're scared of change, they're scared of new situations in case they get things wrong? Or are there other reasons for their procrastinations? So here's just some support documents. I'm just going to whiz through these, but if people are procrastinating, you could actually direct them to some of these templates I'm going to show. There's about 5 of them, or actually sit down with an individual. Coaching isn't just, verbal conversation. It can include helping someone work through a decision-making guide, thinking through 5W and H. Doing a SWOT analysis. This is quite a good one. If someone's procrastinating, you could get them to identify something of this nature, for and against acting in a particular way, or reasons for procrastinating, reasons against procrastinating. So it's just, the idea is that people put a numerical value against an area, and then that enables you as the leader, as the manager, as coach, to have a conversation with them. I noticed that you've given this a 5. Can you tell me a bit more about what it is about the company culture that you think is working against this change? So it's evidence, basically, isn't it, to have that coaching conversation. This is a model that I use a lot. It can be used individually, it can be used with groups. It's also can be done very quickly. So you're having a conversation with someone, and instead of making assumptions, you just say, just so we're clear, or can I just focus on what specifically it is you'd like to improve? What have you done so far? What options have you got, and what are the benefits? The reason, looking at this now, listening to me, you may be thinking, oh, well, okay, fair enough, that's pretty obvious, I sort of do this anyway. But the reality is that we often don't. The reality is that when we're in conversations with people, we have a default way of communicating. And maybe this is your default. Maybe some of you are cabbers, and that's fine. But a lot of the time, it can be helpful to have these little models that as we're talking, we can sort of quickly think to ourselves, have we clarified the issue, or have I made a misassumption, have I perceived something incorrectly? Is the other person clear about the benefits and what's in it for them, what's in it for the organisation to act in a particular way? This is, if I had to nail my top 2-3 coaching models, this would definitely be one of them. Another approach when we're any sort of coaching, leadership coaching, coaching students, coaching ourselves, is just to have a timeline in mind. Go to the future in 2 months, in 2 weeks, by tomorrow, in 6 months' time. What will be different? How will this help? And just have that sense of compelling vision. And I made reference to targets and aims and objectives earlier. We need targets, we need aims, we need goals, we need to be smart. So I'm not dissing those in any way, but on their own, they're just written statements or even verbal agreements. We need people to be compelled to act in certain ways. And this is one way, just to help them to imagine a situation in the future, take them to the past. You know, what have you done that's similar to this? Or, you know, who do you know that's done something like this? What specifically did they do? But some way of drawing on their existing and past experiences is a really powerful approach to coaching others. And then the core bit, I don't know if you've noticed, by the way, but my slides, the yellow bit is usually them as I see it, and you might clearly disagree, but usually the important bit, really. So, you know, where are we now, and what's the first step you can take? If we don't do sometimes we just go straight to that step, but if we've got a little bit more time, exploring the future and exploring the past can be a great way to make that person feel that their experiences are valued and relevant, and that they're not just going through the motions, but they can see how acting has got a benefit to their future self. That's another nice model. That's one I produced myself. It's not totally original, but I produced it myself. Another model that's used usually in individual leadership context, but can be used in a group situation as well, is Oscar. The eagle-eyed amongst you will think, why is it called Oscar when it's Profescaral? The O is the outcome, so you've got the platform and the preferred future, which is the platform is being clear about what the issue is. It sounds obvious, but often we do make incorrect assumptions. Maybe a student, maybe a teacher comes to you and says, I've got a really tough class at the moment, I really don't know where to turn, I'm not sure what to do next. And you might think, because you know 3 of the people in that class, you might assume that you know what the issue is. Whereas for that teacher, it might be a completely different issue. So we've got to be really clear about the platform in any coaching situation. The preferred future I alluded to earlier, you know, if you had a magic wand, what would success look like? Or, you know, what are we working towards? Something that takes people forward. Scaling. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is clueless, 10 is you're a genius, you know, whatever language you use, where are you now? The person says, I'm about a 5 or 6. That's what people tend to say most of the time. And then instead of saying, how are you going to go from a 6 to a 7, make sure you've drawn out the know-how from them. What do they already know? What experiences have they had? What skills have they got that's going to help them? So in other words, if someone says they're a 6, you could say, what are you doing well that's getting you to a 6? What do you know? What have you done? And then we move on to the actions. How can you go from a 6 to a 6.5 or 6 to a 7, and you agree some sort of small step to get people going? Not just, remember what we said earlier, not this vowing to change, but actually doing something in the near future and committing to that. The likelihood of this model may, you know, it sort of just develops what I've just said there, really. How likely is it that they are going to take this action that you've been talking about? If someone says, yeah, I see what, yeah, I really want to do this, but at the moment there's lots of other things. Or if they say I'm a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, they're not going to act. There's been research into this area that's if people don't scale as an 8 or above in terms of how likely it is that they're going to commit to this action, they probably won't do it. So then it's up to you to say, yeah, fair enough, these other things are a priority, we'll revisit this, or to coach and explore how they might, you know, delegate something else or lose something else so that they can spend the time and give the attention to what you've been talking about. So that's, when I do long coaching courses, this is sometimes some organisations use the GROW model. This is my favourite coaching model in terms of it hits most of the key elements of coaching. This is a model that you can use in team meetings. So the text's a little bit smaller. I tried to make my thing look pretty and big text, but hopefully you can still read it okay. So the other models are mainly individual one-to-one situations. This is a very simple way to conduct team meetings, or if you are a teacher or you're facilitating presentations, it's a good group model. So I'll just leave it up for a minute to have a look at. And if you've got a key, say there's a project or there's some issue that's a priority for you at the moment, you can invite other people into your team meeting, people from whatever's appropriate, HR, estates, IT, information, whatever, isn't it, who else is appropriate. The issue holder, which might be you if you're chairing a meeting, it could be any member of staff, so they explain, well, this is what's at stake for me, this is what's going on, this is what I'd like help with. Maybe that's obvious, but if not, other people say, ask for clarification. And then what you do is people in a semicircle, as the issue holder, you look at each person in turn. And they, hopefully, it can be as brief as one sentence. So they give you a solution-focused response. It's not about, oh, I've tried, this is what I tried, but it didn't work. It was a disaster. I don't even know why we're here. You've got to manage it. So it's looking at each person, they give you an idea or a solution, and then no conversation in between. So if someone says something and someone else starts disagreeing or expanding on that, as the issue holder, you just say, just hold that for now, please, because you want to get give each person the opportunity to get their idea expressed. So keep it concise, no chat in between. After you've been round once, you've been around a semicircle, I tend to summarise what people have said very concisely, thank people for the contributions, and then you can open up to a freer discussion. So often if you've got, say, 10 people, within 8 minutes, you've usually got about 10 different ideas or solutions or approaches to an issue. Whereas if you have a free discussion, you're likely to get 2 or 3 people speaking at best, and everyone else either listening passively or not really engaging with their issue. And clearly, the people who are more confident, more extrovert, not necessarily, can be, but not necessarily the ones with the best ideas. So this is a way of quickly going around a circle and getting different ideas from people. So this is a little script that I won't spend too long talking around, but as with everything, hopefully you'll come back to it. How can we manage and lead people who have lost their motivation, their mojo? Use your own phrase. So instead of going, at the moment, if you think about what we might do, we might hear them, or we might think that we know what a person's, why they've lost the motivation, and then we might start telling them what we think they need to do, and so on. And remember what we said at the beginning, that to me is an approach you do have to take with some people, but shouldn't be what you lead with. It shouldn't be your default approach to managing even the most obstinate, challenging, awkward, unmotivated members of staff. So there's a little format, find out what motivated them, hear what they're talking about, try and get some quick wins, small steps. Make sure, I mean, this point 5 may be obvious, but certainly not with students, and not even with some members of staff, that what they're about to do might not work perfectly first time. They might struggle a little bit. They might make mistakes. They might come up against a barrier, but we've agreed some sort of small step and just explored with them. That it might not be completely natural to them what you've asked them to do, but it will help in the long run, that sort of idea. So that's one approach. Another model that I quite like when we're thinking about working with others, leading others, is called the skills wheels. I'll leave that up for a second. So bottom left, low skill, low will, that's when you can be much more, well, you can do what you want, but I'd suggest that when we're working with, it's about often being more directive, being very clear, smart targets, monitoring them regularly, detailed planning. Low skill, high will, typically that's your new starters, very keen, enthusiastic, but don't yet know much. And that's where I'd take more of a mentoring approach. Mentoring is where you're more likely to share your experiences, more likely to give advice, more likely to, what I've said there, maybe give them a couple of options to choose from. So it's more directive than coaching, mentoring, but it's still, you're not just telling them exactly what they need to do. And so on, you know, top right, high will, high skill, we need a different approach to these people. It's often about, you know, asking, you know, when you say what have you done before, what's worked, they're more likely to share that with you, and then you map across their past experiences and triumphs to what you're doing now. So that's quite a useful thing to have in mind when we're coaching people. And do chip in, by the way, guys, because I'm talking to a screen. And hopefully it's relevant and interesting.
Nice thoughts and some points coming in actually, yeah, Bob. So I was just looking for the opportune moment to pop them across.
Yes.
If I just going back a bit before, we will go back to some of the other things which Sally was actually raising. We'll probably look at those in a short while when we'll be going back a bit towards the around the time of the blessing white, when we looked at the video and the like. Yeah. But I think just going back a couple of slides, I know Adam was mentioning or questioning, you know, any thoughts on methods relating to learners, most appropriate short courses, short duration, minimal contact. But I think that was that around the motivation part there, Adam? You could just add that back to me as well, if you like. And as Sally was just mentioning as well there, it's just yeah, that's what Adam was looking at, round about the motivation. So do you want me to read that back to you there, Bob, or did you pick that up?
I think I got it. I mean, it's, you know, I think a lot of this is a good, just clarifying, you know, asking someone, you know, what they're going to do after the course. This, whether you're doing the clarify action benefit or the timeline, I think both models would work well. So they need a sense of why they're here and what's it going to do for them, for their lives, for their jobs, prospects, for their, you know, in any context. So you're trying to get a sense of what's compelling them. Sometimes it's a kick up, sometimes they've got to be there because they've been told to be, then it is more challenging. But we still want to clarify why they're there and what they're hoping to achieve. We still need to say, you know, what's the smallest thing you can do to really help you to get the most from this course? And we maybe want to explore the benefit. So most of what we've been looking at is relevant to a lot of these contexts. You know, tell me about a course you've done in the past where you were successful, and what skills enabled you to be successful. So, you know, you've got to be creative around these core issues of timelines and cabs, but the issues are, you know, relevant. And obviously I've got shed loads of good coaching questions. I didn't want to just stick on some slides, but if Adam or anyone wants to contact me afterwards, then I'm happy to share some specific questions that can work in different situations.
I think we looked at it briefly in some of the previous webinars as well, haven't we, Bob? So yeah. So again, that's something that Adam and others, we can certainly help you out with looking at. And Adam's in Sheffield as well, by the way, Bob. So we can make that happen. And
if you ever want to meet up, Adam, because I live in Sheffield, I'm happy to sort of go and have a cup of tea with you if you want to talk anything through. But I mean, in the mindset, I think Marek was alluding to, an individual's mindset affects everything. You know, it affects the way you think, it affects how you feel about yourself, about what you're doing. And we want to move people to this sort of can-do, have-a-go growth mindset, which is often things like helping them to take these small steps, exploring with them what mistakes, what happens when they do make a mistake or hit a barrier, what's their approach to that? Do they give up, or do they look for a different strategy? So it's trying to shift the mindset, and there's loads of ways you can do that. I don't want to get too diverted now, but part of it is about understanding things like how the brain works. If a student knows that they can actually change their existing habits of thought, their beliefs, their mindset, and then if they actually think that it's not just something they hope can happen, but there's a physiological process. The brain literally changes itself when you focus your attention in different places and act differently. So that can be quite powerful, exploring issues around mindset and resilience with students.
Real.
Just sometimes I remember what we started with. Coaching usually is about holding back on giving advice and about trying to explore and get inside people's head and so on. But sometimes if people are just blank slates, either because they're not experienced enough or they're not engaging in the process, it's perfectly fine to give advice or to give options. And if you do, here's some questions that you could ask. So again, I'll leave this up for a minute or two. And at the end, Marek, I want 2 or 3 more things to look at, and then maybe we can come back to Sally's or anyone else's questions at the end, if that's okay.
Oh, no problem at all, because there was another one that Alexandra brought up around a grow model. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Brilliant, thanks.
Yeah. So this is remember we looked at the skills wills as well. People with low skill, low will. If there's not much merit in being over authoritarian. Sometimes we've got to be, I know that, but we can tell them what to do, and they can nod and smile and say, yeah, okay, fair enough, I'll get on with it. But if people feel that they've been having things imposed on them, then they will often comply. Some people won't, some people will comply. But that clip we looked at, what we're trying to do is create environments, whether it's a classroom environment, a staff room environment, or if you're a senior leader, an organizational environment based on engagement, based on commitment and engagement. Compliance will take you so far, but if the primary culture of your space, and I may use that with your classroom or organization, is about compliance, and students and staff get that as soon as they pick up that if the carrots and sticks approach to working with people, then they will go so far with compliance, but they won't go the extra mile. There's a nice coaching model, a little coaching model that's called Going the Extra Mile, and really it's just exploring what it is, thinking times in the past when they've gone the extra mile in a situation, gone beyond the bare sort of requirements, and what motivated them, inspired them, and how did they feel when they did that. So that's what we want, isn't it? That's the sort of environments that people want to stay in. We talked about your best staff leaving, but your best staff will leave and your best colleagues will leave if the environment is based on fear, compliance, and they're not encouraged to take a few little risks, and then they're not being coached. They've got a very sort of old school directive hierarchical approach to being managed, and that's exactly the same if we're talking about classroom contexts as other contexts. Here's a little script that you can come back to when we are having challenging conversations with staff or students. So I'll leave that up for a few seconds. If you can hear any meowing, Lucy's, my cat's kicking off because you can hear my voice, and it's raining a little bit. So apologies for the background cat noises if anyone can hear that. So yeah, this doesn't need expanding, just something for you to come back to, because if you ask what's the most hardest thing about being a leader, a manager, what's the toughest thing about being a teacher, most people say it's managing underperformance or having challenging conversations. And this, again, looking at it now, you might say, yeah, I sort of do that, but it's really helpful to have a checklist in your head, even in your diary. you know, write some of the core elements from this, have it on a piece of paper or on a diary, and then glancing at it now and again as you're having a conversation. You know, what effect is X having on Y? From my perspective, X is at stake. Making it crystal clear, and it's not personal to that person. You're actually saying, this is what's going on, this is what's at stake. You tell me your perspective. Now we need to move forward and agree some action. So coaching can be very assertive. It's not soft and pink and fluffy like some people often associate coaching with. So just 2 summary slides. This is another concept that I think applies to most reflective and coaching situations. Is there anything that's not working and we can stop doing? Is there anything we could do in the future? And what we're doing well, let's do more of it. Another thing for you to have in mind in most situations. Another great way to facilitate team meetings as well. You know, or classroom context. You've done something and you want to review what you've done, and I don't think they can do much worse than identifying issues in these 3 areas. So finally, what is it coaching can do? We could have listed many more things, but in essence, this is my sort of little summary of what I think we're trying to do when we're coaching other people. So that's the end of the sort of main input from me. But if Marek or anybody wants to type in or mic up and ask some questions, you know, I may be able to answer them, or some of you guys may be able to. So over to you, Marek, to summarise.
If anyone would like to use a microphone, just let me know, because there were some fantastic points across. I know that Sally was going to use a microphone, but it sounded like there were a couple of issues technically over there in Turkey. Funnily enough, usually whenever we do anything with Sally, her quality is actually better than our web quality from over there. But there's a couple of great points that were coming through. But just taking another step back there to one of the models that Alexandra was talking about using, is the GROW model. Is it?
Yeah.
Is this one that you use as well, Bob? Do you want me to read out?
No, not a GROW model. I do. If you do a coaching course, it's probably the most common model, and it's a good model. I just, I prefer Oscar personally, because it's more. I like this idea of timelines. Yeah. And I'm not saying GROW doesn't do that, but I like the idea of getting people to go forward in time, go back in time to access prior learning, and then to focus on the now. So, yeah GROW is a good model.
That's definitely one to. I know it's one that we've looked at before as well, and it's certainly one I'd recommend also to those listening to have a look at. But I know that Sally was also saying it was really quite refreshing to see that some of this was the engagement on a human level, and not making productivity the focus of conversation as well. Because that is a really nice way of engaging some of the people you're working with, or learners and the like, isn't it? When you're actually looking at it more on the human level than actually on the productivity, and that's really getting the conversation going.
Well, yeah, and you probably know what I'm going to say now, but would all agree that the 2 things are inextricably linked. Productivity will improve, and that's what the clip was about, engagement. Productivity will improve and think about the managers we've had. We've all been managed at some stage. Managers who can put different hats on. They can be very strict and have clear boundaries and guidelines, and other times it can be playful, and other times they use coaching. They try to get you to take some actions based on your own thinking. And then what we do then is, if what the other person's saying is ridiculous or unrealistic, then we just come in and refocus them. But
it's nice to see managers realise that this affects the bottom line in so many different ways, though, isn't it? As you're saying there, the bottom line is often you forget that is also keeping staff, retaining them.
Definitely. I mean, I don't want to say too much in case anyone. I left my last teaching job because of a change in a senior level culture where it was about fear and compliance, and I didn't feel valued, and I left, and like to think I was, and other really good members of staff left too. You know, and it's not that we want complete autonomy, but I want to have respectful conversations, which is what coaching does.
Yeah, that's true. It was a nice little approach from Sally as well. Sally's mentioning, and I did put this back out, so hopefully everyone could have seen this in the sort of question section as well. So Sally was saying, when people stuck can't clarify the thoughts, it can be helpful to encourage them to draw diagrams and make links, which can help identify barriers, strategies, and other people that might help them move forwards.
Definitely. Whether that's I gave you some examples, SWOT analysis, cost benefit, mind maps, flow charts, definitely, it helps to clarify thoughts using these graphic organizers. Yeah.
And just going back to the blessing white, again, it was Sally was suggesting it'd be very interesting to look at those staff who feel undervalued, such as personal tutors. I know that personal tutors is an area which is very important to Sally, and they're not always recognised for the contribution to achievement, etc. And you could see how the blessing white sort of model could be applied to this and similar groups. And it's highlighting the importance of learning about other staff in the same that. We need to know about our learners to help them achieve the best. So we need to know, who's around us as well in the organisation.
Definitely. And not assume. I mean, hopefully one of the core messages from today has been not thinking that we can read people's mind or we assume what it is. That's what coaching does. It clarifies assumptions.
No, fantastic. Any other questions or thoughts that are coming through? Kimberly again there. Kimberly suggesting it's important to recognise staff who are lacking motivation before they feel the end point, and that is just the key, isn't it?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's I've been doing a lot of work with things like lesson observations, and some organisations there's way too much weight on lesson observations as a way to manage performance and so on. I mean, it's completely, I don't get too hot on this issue because I feel passionately about it. They completely exaggerated the the weight that you put on lesson observations. It's things like regular and informal coaching, corridor conversations, water cooler conversations they're sometimes called, where you say, oh, how are you getting on? What have you done? What are the benefits? And don't say it like you're going through a model, but use these principles that we've been looking at on a regular basis with people. Team meetings. How many team meetings do we go to where we walk out drained instead of inspired?
Yeah.
You spend an hour and a half with someone spending 20 minutes reading through the minutes from last time, reading stuff out, instead of maybe having something like that semicircle. Here's what's going on. I want to take an idea from each of you, ideally, and then focus on one of these ideas and agree some sort of little action points. This coaching's got so many applications in different contexts.
Yeah, I know. Sally's concurring there. You couldn't agree more. Talk to people. You don't need to constantly, but put people under this microscope to know what's happening. Yeah. Yes. That's true. There's some great points that have been put through here by participants as well. That's super. Some great feedback as well. And it's I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here, and we recognise the same issues within our organisations. And perhaps it seems like a lot of the people we've got here attending are the leaders who are going to be carrying this forward, as we all recognise it's been a problem. Just seeing what we can do to make the changes. Super.
Well, thanks. Just two things to round off then. One is, if anyone does want an informal conversation with me about this or anything else, no strings attached, no fees exchanged, very happy to do that. But equally, if you want to have a conversation about me delivering some CPD or doing some consultancy or coaching, one-to-one coaching with senior staff or any staff, I am a gun for hire. So feel free to hire this gun.
Your details are on the slides, aren't? Oh yes, sorry, I couldn't see that slide behind my question box I've got up there. Yeah, so Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend having that conversation with Bob. And as I say, for anyone who's local as well, he does like a cup of tea, and there's plenty of places around Sheffield and the like to drop in there. But yeah,
or a pint in the Sheffield tap. You know, I'm not averse to someone employing me for an hour for a pint.
Yeah, you've got a great point there. So yeah, thanks a lot, Bob. Once again, superb session, and I think I say this every time we do deliver one of these webinars as part of Teaching and Learning Suite. But I actually walk away feeling motivated and take at least one takeaway with me, which I then use and continue to use. So much appreciated, Bob. And thanks for all the feedback and contribution from attendees here. As I say, I'll be making sure now that I go away, digitize the video. You'll all be receiving a copy of this, and I know quite a few of you already said you'll be sharing this with your managers and your colleagues, and also be providing you with the slides there. And brilliant. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks, Adam. We'll see you soon. Much appreciated. We'll set that little meeting up with Bob as well for you. Sally, we can do that. Yeah, no problem. So yeah, if you're tuned in as well and you're watching this on the video, you've got Bob's contact details there, so please consider getting in contact. Thank you very much all, and see you soon.